Hi guys, it's Dr. Odet Sooter here. I have some technical difficulties again, so I'm on my phone, but I want to see if I can just get on my computer real quick and see if I can share that live as we go. But hi everyone, and I'm sure you've seen my attire here. I'll show you some more because, you know, when I talk about poop, there's always a lot of fun that can be had. So anyways, let me just go here to my home page on my computer. Just see if it's getting started here. Happening. Oh yeah, it is happening. Hi everyone. I know there are a few people. I hope you can hear me. So if you could just leave a comment real quick, that would be awesome. Let's see. Housekeeping thing real quick. Before we get going, I wanted to share that to a group as well. Hi Patricia, thank you. Yep, I love it too. Gotta have the right attire, right? So let me share that real quick so that some other people can join as well if they feel like it. Here we go. What's the animal? All right. Hi Josie. Hi Cheryl. You guys hear me? That's very good. All right, I'm getting there. Hold on. Poop will also let some other people's kind of come in and you know, get a good view of my hat. All right, the power of poop happening now. All right, how are you guys all doing? I hope it's summer where you are as well. It's just been so beautiful here. You know, things are growing in the garden, pool is open. Thankfully, I have neighbors who have a pool that I can use. That's always awesome. All right, so that's done. And then I'm just gonna share it to my personal page as well. I'm not sure if that's doing it automatically or not. I'm not sure, but anyways, so share to a page and then I will be with you with my full attention. All right. Oh, it doesn't work. Okay. Well, in any case, here we are. All right. Very good. Great. Now I can actually see it on my computer too, and I know there's some way. It's nice to see you. Hi, Roman. Guten Morgen. He's from Switzerland. So, you know, I'm assuming you speak Swiss German, unless you're from the French-speaking part or the Italian-speaking part. We have 4 languages in Switzerland, so, you know. All right, let's see. Freezing in and out. Sorry about that. I have some issues with my computer. And I know last time there was a little bit of issues with sound from my phone. It was going in and out, so I'm going to try to speak really loudly, and I hope that's going to work. If there is some going in and out, just kind of, you know, let me know. Hopefully I'll see that message, but anyways, modern technology, you know, it was fixed, my camera, but I tried it and I started it again today on my computer and it didn't work. So I don't know what's going on there. Anyways, so let's get going because we have a lot to cover. But first, you know, I hope everybody saw my hat. You know, you gotta have the right attire when you're talking about poop. I wear that when I do fecal transplants at the clinic as well, just for some fun. And then obviously when I go to any kind of conferences promoting, you know, fecal transplants, poop, and so on, I also wear shirts that kind of fit that. And I don't know if you can see it, but it says basically, my dog only eats organic treats and his own poop or something like that. Anyway, so I have about 10 t-shirts that have all kinds of different things on it, just for fun, because, well, you gotta have fun, otherwise it's boring. All right, anyways, oh, from Malaysia, it must be in the middle of the night. Hi, everyone. Okay, so I wanted to get started first to kind of share a little bit why I'm so passionate about poop and why poop is so important. And so I want to provide you a little bit of that awe that I feel every time I think about it and what I know about it. That isn't showing very well. Anyways, so the microbes in the gut, we call that the microbiome. They're made out of parasites, bacteria, viruses, and fungi. And the number of these microbes in the gut are about 100 trillion, at least in humans. Since the GI tract is a little shorter in dogs and cats, for example, there's probably a little bit less, but you know, you get the gist. There's a ton of them. Obviously, they're going to be a whole lot more in cows and horses because they have an even bigger GI tract. But in any case, there are a ton of microbes in the gut. Parasites in humans, they say it's about 300,000. Viruses, there are about 10 to the 31. I grew up in Switzerland, so I don't quite know how to say that. But anyways, 10 with 31 zeros. And that's 10 million times more than there are stars in the universe. Although I'm not sure how they figured that out because the universe is supposed to be infinite, so I'm not sure. Bacteria, there are about 40,000. Fungi, about 5 million. So there are tons and tons of microbes in the gut. And when we compare that to the cells that the body is made of, it's about 10 times more than we have cells in the body. And on a genetic level, the microbes outnumber us by outnumber the cells, you know, DNA by a factor of 150 to 1,000. I saw different numbers in that regard. So basically, my question to you then is, who's really running the show here? Is it the cells of the body or is it the microbes? Completely outnumbered possible. Well, I hope you guessed it right, but it's really the microbes that are running the ship. They're like the puppet master. So it's so important that we work with the microbes in the gut to help them be healthy, to have really good diversity, because that's the part that's really important, is diversity. So we don't want to have just one species of microbe with a, you know, that has a huge number of it. We want to have a lot of different species. We want to have a lot of diversity. And unfortunately, nowadays in our culture of using disinfectants and cleaning everything and not touching the ground and spraying things that kill microbes in the ground, we end up being deficient in microbes. So there's about a 90% deficiency in the microbiome. So that's a big deal, you know, because these microbes in the gut, they come from somewhere. They come from the soil, they come from the foods that we eat. They come from, you know, I mean, dogs rolling around eating God knows what they're going to eat. Well, their own poop for one, and then goose poop and rabbit poop and other poop. So that's where all these microbes come from. And if we disinfect everything and if we keep everything super clean, then that diversity in the gut can't be happening. You know, it's just not going to be there. And the thing that, you know, our microbes do is they are like a chemical factory. So they produce vitamins, they produce neurotransmitters, they support the immune system, they balance it, they train the immune system so that it doesn't overreact to things that it shouldn't be reacting to. It helps with chronic issues, it helps with inflammation. I have a whole list here that I just want to pull up because for some reason my brain is not retaining it right now. Probably still a little nervous. Anyway, so it also helps with intestinal maturation. So when you have a puppy, you have to have, you know, it has to be exposed to these microbes so that it then can train the body and the GI tract to not overreact to something. So for example, if we didn't have enough microbes in the gut that were training the dog to not be sensitive to chicken, for example, it would then have a reaction to it. So it basically trains the body to determine whether something is toxic or damaging, or if it's something that will be health promoting. So it really trains it. And if you think of it, there's so much, there are so many things that we all take in our animals, our dogs, cats, etc. And so the intestines need to be trained, or the immune system needs to be trained to not react to all of these things, because otherwise we would be constantly sick. And that's really what happens with some of these animals that have leaky gut. When I do some allergy testing or food sensitivity testing, oftentimes they come back sensitive to everything. And that's because they have so much inflammation going on and their immune system is just overreacting to every single thing. So we have to kind of fix that. And I'll get to that a little bit later. So intestinal maturation, microbes also inhibit the growth of pathogens. So basically they keep the balance. So it's not that there are bad bacteria or bad microbes. It's more that when they become imbalanced that we tend to have an issue. So if we have an overgrowth of certain ones compared to others, that's when we have some issues. And I actually do have just an image here, and I hope you guys are going to be able to see it right here. So on the side closer to my pinky finger, that would be the right side, I think, whatever. That would be the microbiome distribution of a healthy animal. And then the other one that has a lot of, orange colors, that's from an unhealthy dog. So you can see it's not so much, the microbes themselves. It's more that there's overgrowth of certain microbes that aren't supposed to be there in that number, that then cause issues, because they can cause inflammation, etc., and just decrease of certain production of neurotransmitters and so on. And then this is the same dog, again, with the, let me see if I can point here. That would be the healthy dog donor, the healthy dog, and that would be after having had the treatment. So you can see there's definitely a huge improvement there. So anyway, so it really helps to, keep some of these pathogens down and keeps the balance, so that if they eat salmonella or E. coli or some clostridium, that comes with the food, that they can really, fight that and not be affected by it. And then we also have help with digestion of food, obviously. A lot of these microbes, they produce digestive enzymes. They also produce taurine, other nutrients. They also produce bile acids that help with the digestion of fat. And they also help to excrete toxins. So a lot of these microbes, they will take the toxins out of the system and get rid of them out of the GI tract. They produce neurotransmitters. So in a lot of dogs, actually they've done a study where they found that some of these dogs that have a tendency to aggression tend to have an overgrowth of certain microbes. So a bit of a different balance. So there's a lot that can be done in that regard. There's a lot of good healing compounds that come with it. Again, training the immune system, decreasing immune response, increasing, certain immune functions that tend to be more calming and healing, etc. So there's so much that they do, these microbes in the gut. And so that's why it's so important that they are balanced. And some of the symptoms that I see when there are imbalances in the microbes are issues such as IBD or other chronic issues like intermittent vomiting, for example, diarrhea, loss of appetite, picky eater, for example, or not wanting to eat what they used to be eating and thriving on, nausea, frequent lip licking can be a part of that as well. I actually just did a microbiome test on a dog that kept licking constantly and also had a lot of allergies and other things. And what came back on the test result was that she didn't have anything that resembled a healthy microbiome. I mean, all of her microbes were, E. coli or Clostridium, and pretty much had nothing of, what a normal microbiome would have. So nausea and then burping, extended neck, heartburn, acid reflux, flatulence, grumbling in the gut, bloating, excessive drooling. All of these things can all be a sign that there is a microbial imbalance. So, when I keep repeating that on my Facebook pages or the holistic, animal advice page that I'm on, if I keep talking about the gut and you think I'm just repeating myself and that's the only thing I know about, it's just because it's just so amazing, what the gut can do, and I mean the gut microbiome, and how much it can affect overall health. So I hope that you found a little bit of awe in that, because yeah, it's just amazing. I mean, I've seen so many dogs improve tremendously. There was one German Shepherd, his name was Bear, or is Bear, he's still alive. And he had diarrhea for 2 years. He had been diagnosed with IBD, and they had done, food sensitivity testing. They had changed his diet to a raw food, etc. But he was still having diarrhea, and it wasn't until we did a fecal transplant that his diarrhea finally went away. So within a couple of days, his poop was pretty much normal. He had a lot more energy, and his anxiety level went way down. And because Bear was supposed to be a police dog, but he had so much anxiety going on that they just could never use him for that. So he wasn't even able to really go through the training. And so after he had a fecal transplant, that really pretty much changed his life. He started playing with his brother, and just really amazing things that can happen. And the connect, I guess you might also ask, what the connection is from the microbiome with the brain, because I mentioned aggression, I mentioned anxiety. Well, the microbiome creates a lot of neurotransmitters. So most of the serotonin in the body is actually coming from the microbiome and is in the gut. The brain actually makes very little of it, and the microbiome also makes other types of neurotransmitters, such as GABA and other things, other ones that help balance out the brain, because these neurotransmitters get absorbed into the system and then they kind of float around and get to the brain as well. But the microbiome through the nervous system of the GI tract also affects the vagus nerve. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of the vagus nerve. It's a very long nerve that actually starts in the brain. It's one of the cranial nerves because it starts in the cranium, in the head, and it runs along the front of the neck, kind of under the flexors here, goes through along with the esophagus, through the diaphragm, and then innervates the GI tract. And along the way, it also innervates all the organs in the chest cavity. But then it goes down to the gut, and in there, the vagus nerve obviously creates motility and helps to stimulate the gut to do what it's supposed to do as far as movement and so on goes. But the vagus nerve also sends information back up to the brain. So all the information in the GI tract that's happening there is going back up to the brain via the vagus nerve. So if we have irritation of the vagus nerve, that will also cause irritation within the brain. And an irritated brain is an inflamed brain. And an inflamed brain doesn't function well. So, if you have a dog that constantly has anxiety for no really particular good reason, because there obviously are dogs that have had bad experiences in their lives and will have anxiety because of that, because they were traumatized. But if there's no real apparent reason for aggression or moping around or anxiety, then we should be looking to the gut and see if we can help them on that in that regard, because that can make a big difference for them. So with that, with that gut, because with that microbiome, because it affects everything, it basically keeps the animals as healthy as possible. And we really need it for everything. So I just wanted to mention a few studies that were done that show how effective the microbiome is and how important it is. So for example, in children, they have found that if they don't have a microbiome that is normal and healthy from the very beginning, their brain cannot develop properly. And past a certain age, if the microbiome hasn't recovered enough, past that certain age, the brain will never be able to develop properly if they didn't have the microbiome in the beginning. And so, that kind of leads me to talking just a little bit of where does the microbiome really come from. So the initial microbiome it comes from mom. So when they're born, the puppies, they get inoculated with the microbiome from their mother. But if they go through C-section, they get inoculated with the microbiome that is in the air and on the surgeon's, well, hopefully not too much on the surgeon's hand, because we want it to be somewhat sterile, obviously, when we go cut around in a dog. But that's where the microbiome would come from the environment, so not from mom herself. So it's very important that from the very beginning they get the microbiome that's already healthy. So even before the puppy is born, it's really important to have a healthy microbiome in the mother. And that microbiome can be supported, obviously, in many different ways, but one of them is definitely to be outside, because a lot of the microbes that are in the gut also are in the soil. So it's very important that animals get to be outside, play in the dirt, preferably, obviously, in an area that hasn't been sprayed heavily with chemicals, because that kills the microbes in the soil, and then they don't have as many microbes that they can take in. So spending time outside, going into the woods, having them roll around, different environments are really important for a microbiome to create a lot of diversity. Having diverse foods as well is important. So, I personally am not a huge fan of having them eat the same thing over and over again. So you want to have variety, you want to switch brands, you want to switch proteins, you want to add vegetables and all sorts of things that just bring more variety. Having them play with different dogs can also help, because that brings more variety. And then obviously fecal transplants, but I'll get to that in a little bit. But one thing that can certainly be done in puppies when they're born, and let's just say they were born through C-section, is to inoculate them with a little bit of feces from their mother. So we'll just put a little bit in the mouth, and that will kind of go down with the milk, and we'll inoculate them. Dr. Roman does that. She's like the fecal transplant person go-to person. She's one of the pioneers in the dog world anyways. So she breeds her own donor dogs, and every time she gets puppies, she will inoculate these puppies every week with a little bit of poop from their mother, so that they can end up with a really good microbiome to then pass it on to some other dogs that really need it. So that would be part of that. I want to just briefly talk about testing. So we do have tests available for fecal for the microbiome. Unfortunately, the tests are still quite limited these days. As you can imagine, if we have 100 trillion different microbes in the gut, testing of 100 trillion microbes is just impossible. So right now the tests are basically checking for bacteria for the most part, but at least a microbiome test. Obviously there are some other tests that will also test for viruses and things like that, and more is in the process of coming about and being studied. But we have animal biome. They have a microbiome testing, and that's the test that I showed you earlier right here, which can be very helpful to see what's going on, because some of these microbes that are in the gut, like the Escherichia shigella group or the Clostridial group, they sometimes need a little bit of extra help to decrease the numbers. But anyway, so we have that testing. It's very simple. It just takes a little bit of poop that needs to be put in a little vial and then sent off. And then we get the results within like a couple of weeks or so. So that's very easy to do. And it's the only test that I know of. There are some other tests that just check for gut dysbiosis. So you basically get an index of how big, how dysbiotic, which means how much of an imbalance in the microbiome there is. But since they don't really give you information on which microbes are overgrown or, not present or not sufficiently present, I don't really find that test to be all that helpful, because it just tells you there's dysbiosis, but for the most part we already know that. I mean, it doesn't take a test to really figure that out. Animal biome testing, and then for treatment, obviously, we always talk about dogs eating poop. That's really a good thing, unless the poop that the dog is eating is not healthy itself. So it's always better to have to do fecal transplant with actual poop that has been tested, because all of the donors that we use, Animal Biome has donors, Dr. Roman has donors. I used to have a donor, haven't found one yet, again, because they're very hard to come by. About, I can't remember, it was like some 75 to 80% of dogs that are tested as a donor actually cannot be used as a donor dog because their microbiome is not good enough. So donor dogs have to have a really, really amazing microbiome to even qualify. And Animal Biome, they test their donor dogs. I mean, every poop they gets tested to see, what the microbiome is like. So that gives you a lot of security that, most likely there's not going to be any pathogens that come with it. But that can never be ruled out, because again, we have 100 trillion microbes in the gut, and not every microbe can be tested for. And then, so with fecal transplants, we can have either freeze-dried capsules, that's what Animal Biome has, or then we can also have fresh poop from dogs that are, donor dogs that, the poop is just being shipped. Dr. Roman does that. She ships the, feces all across the country to different veterinarians to do rectal fecal transplants. She also has capsules with just the, fecal matter in it, not freeze-dried. So there are different varieties, and it will always depend a little bit on the animal, on what they do best with. For example, I have one dog right now that I'm working with who has some neurologic issues that prevent, optimal function of the mouth. So I would be much more worried about trying to shove a capsule down their throat when that's the issue. Some dogs are, a bit more difficult to handle, so they do better with capsules, which is really easy to give. Just one thing with the capsules, it's always best not to open them up and give them whole, because they are coated so that they don't get dissolved in the stomach, because we want the bacteria and the microbes or the fecal transplant to go into the small intestine. And then we also have the rectal version of it, which is very easy, doesn't require any type of sedation for the most part. Cats can be a little bit difficult, if you can't put a thermometer up there into their butt, they probably are not going to be all that happy about sticking a tube up there. But we do enemas on cats all the time as well, and they do just fine. So if anybody wants to sedate your animal to do a rectal fecal transplant, that's really not necessary because it works just fine. The advantage or the differences between the two, the oral and the rectal form, is that with the oral capsules it goes into the small intestine. With the rectal fecal transplant it goes into the colon. So we don't quite know, I mean, basically usually the microbial imbalances are more in the small intestine, although it can also be in the large intestine and the colon. So getting the capsules directly into the small intestine can have some beneficial, you know, can be more beneficial on some level. But then again, before we had capsules, I was doing fecal transplants for a few years rectally, and it always worked as well. So I can't really say which works better, because we also can never go back and say, well, let's try that route and see if that works better. So it works either way, and it's really just a preference and, you know, also availability, I guess, because Animal Biome sells their capsules to the public directly. If you want to do a rectal transplant, you have to have your vet do that. So it very much depends on your situation. Yeah, I think that's sort of about it that I wanted to talk about as far as that goes. So let me just check my cheat sheet real quick. Oh yeah, I wanted to talk briefly about probiotics because over the years I've changed my view on probiotics a little bit. Because the thing is that the microbiome in a healthy animal would be balanced, and so it maintains itself. So unless there is some sort of an insult that creates an imbalance in that microbiome, there's really not a whole lot of need to give a specific probiotic. Because the problem with probiotics is that there are only about, you know, if you're lucky, 20 different species in the microbiome, in a probiotic, usually a lot less than that. So if you keep feeding the same probiotic over and over again, what is going to happen to the microbiome? Well, it could cause an imbalance in the microbiome itself just from the probiotics. And they've actually done a study in humans where they compared people who had been on antibiotics, and some of those would get, you know, one group of these people were getting probiotics and the other ones were not. And they found that the people who had not gotten any probiotics, their microbiome recovered much faster than the ones who had received probiotics. Because as the antibiotics were killing some of the microbiome in the gut of these humans, some of these the strains from the probiotics that they were taking were able to take a hold and start to kind of take over. And so it was much harder for the microbiome then to go back to what it was because of these probiotics that had kind of taken hold. So I'm not a huge fan anymore of probiotics. Certainly if you alternate them and don't stay with the same one over and over, you know, for years, which is what, you know, many people tend to do. Certainly it doesn't hurt once in a while, but I'm much more, you know, I think that just getting you know, good microbe exposure, you know, from the environment, from the food, etc., should be enough if the microbiome is healthy to begin with, to maintain it. But it certainly doesn't hurt to do a little bit of a fecal transplant here and there. I do fecal transplants on the donor dog I used to have, just so that he would have a little more diversity and pass it along. So, you know, I think maybe doing a fecal transplant, you know, once a year or something like that probably wouldn't hurt, if you can do that, just to kind of, you know, give him a little bit of sprucing up, especially because we live in an environment that has a lot of toxins and is not really promoting the health of the microbes these days. So that can be helpful. So that's kind of my thought on probiotics. So I don't usually recommend them as much anymore in my practice. I still have some, but I barely ever sell them. Somebody had asked me about enzymes. That is a different story. Enzymes is definitely something I highly do recommend still, because a lot of the foods that we provide our animals, they are lacking enzymes. So providing a little bit of extra enzymes can be really helpful to help digest the food. And that also then helps the microbes themselves, because they then have a little less to do. So just kind of keeping it up that way with the enzymes can be very helpful. Prebiotics, that's a different story. Prebiotics are what basically feeds feed the microbes. So those can be very helpful. And they can come from foods. A lot of vegetables, for example, are prebiotics. Sunchokes, for example, they're good as a prebiotic. I can never say that. Arabinogalactanes are, sorry, those are prebiotics, and then certain fibers, other kinds of fibers like inulin can also help with that. So we want to also feed the microbes in the gut, and that's important. So when you ask Lauren how to sustain it, is by feeding the microbiome, by giving it what it needs in order to be able to to grow and continue with reproducing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll up now because I know there were some questions that I probably all missed. So let me go there. And if I did miss one of your questions, just post it again, but I'm going to scroll through here. What testing do you recommend to see the results of your dog's gut biome? That was Donna. As I mentioned, I use animal biome testing. I've done more and more of that, and I'm starting to get the hang of interpreting it, because that's not quite as simple either, because we know very little about the microbiome still. There's still a whole lot more to learn about it. So, as we go, we learn. And then, so yeah, that one is over the counter. And then, yeah, that's what I recommend. Sneaking some viewing at work. Love the hat. Yeah, thanks, Stephanie. I do too. I think it looks cute. All right. Question. Do you feel the condition where a dog licks air and gulps is more related to a microbiome problem or a vaccinosis problem? Donna. Very good question. Well, the microbiome gets affected by a lot of different things, including vaccines. Because if vaccines create an overreaction of the immune system, that can also affect the gut and the microbiome as a result. Because if we have if an animal has a really inflamed gut, from leaky gut or from whatever insult there may have been, it basically creates an environment that's not very nice for microbes. Dr. Roman actually had a good example for that. If you have an apartment that's all built out of concrete. Everything is concrete. The furniture is concrete. The soil is the ground. The floor is concrete. Everything is concrete. I mean, how inviting is that, right? Nobody would want to live there. But if you have an apartment that is lush and nurturing and has good food there and is just inviting and relaxing, then that's a much better environment for the microbes to want to go there. So before we do any sort of fecal transplant, for example, as well, is we want to create an inviting GI tract. So if there are food sensitivities, I would definitely want to get the dog off the foods that are offending, because otherwise it's like trying to extinguish the fire with doing a fecal transplant while we're still putting oil in the fire with foods that are offending. And oftentimes they can eat that food again later once their microbiome is rebalanced and their gut is healed. But we do have to create an environment that's healthy, and that's the preparation part of it. We give them the diet that we want them to have. We give them some GI support. I use Ion Gut. It used to be called LumaPet, because that's a soil molecule or compound that helps communication between microbes, because all these microbes need to communicate with each other, otherwise it doesn't work. You know, if you have to have one puppet master as a whole in order for everything to work. If all these microbes do whatever they feel like because they can't hear each other, then that's a problem. And one of the things that actually causes communication issues within the microbiome and the cells in general is electromagnetic pollution. So me holding my cell phone here on Wi-Fi, on internet mode, is probably not very healthy for my microbiome. They're probably going to not communicate as well with each other for a little while. But anyway, so there are different things, including vaccines, drugs, even herbs. You know, if you give them herbs that are antibacterial, for example, or antiviral or antifungal, that will also change the microbiome in the gut. So I'm also not a huge fan of endless use of colloidal silver, for example, because it's an antibacterial, antiviral, so it can also disturb the microbiome that way. So there are so many ways the microbiome can be disturbed. I mean, just one meal can cause a bit of an issue within the microbiome. You know, for example, gluten, that will cause leaky gut for every single person right away. But most people are able to recover from that very quickly, so they don't end up with issues. But that affects the GI tract, the microbes in the gut. So just because you fix the microbiome once doesn't mean that it's going to stay all the way healthy for the rest of the animal's life. So it can be helpful, as I mentioned, to just redo it once in a while, just to give them a little bit of a boost. So I hope that answers that question. Yeah, Tanya, healthy gut microbiome is a huge factor in calmness, definitely. And Tracy, all 4 of my German Shepherds have had animal biome tests, and even though they were at a good level, I still did the animal biome capsules, and they still improved in digestion and coat. They are all raw fed, and okay, now it's cutting it off, so I can't see the rest of it, but I'm sure you guys read it. But that's good. I'm glad, because it's all proactive medicine. You know, it's like, the more proactive you can be, and the more you can, address the gut, the healthier your animal is going to be overall. And hi, several people have been waving. Hi, everyone. From Seattle, from Georgia. What can an owner do if the dam had a C-section and the puppies haven't been given the dam's poop to eat? So for the puppies, you can always do fecal transplants. That's very easy. I do that with my puppy patients, sometimes just because I think that they can benefit from it. So I just send people home with a little bit of poop that they can give orally. And then, why does the mother eat newborn puppy's poop? Good microbes. I'm not sure about that, Josie. I know you mentioned something about cleaning up on another email that you had sent me, but I'm not sure why the mother will eat newborn puppy's poop. I'm wondering if it may be just to kind of keep the den clean as well, because they live in a den, and so if there's poop everywhere, that would be a little bit messy. So I'm not quite sure about that. Tanya, are there other things we can do to help the gut microbiome to stay healthy? I think I've mostly answered that. With prebiotics, not probiotics, but prebiotics. Fermented foods can help, but again, variety is very important. We don't want to feed the same thing over and over again. Sustaining it, I mentioned that. So what about a dog that eats answers all the time? Is this bad, Erica? I'm just not a fan of sticking to the same thing continuously. I would add variety, because everything Answers is a really good product, because what happens is they do wild or open air fermentation, so all the microbes in the air will also get into the food. So depending on air and what's going on, seasonally, etc., there's going to be a lot of variety in that fermented food, for sure. So that's a good thing. But nevertheless, you know, there is such a thing as overdoing things you know, with fermentation products, and so I generally recommend to have variety and alternate, you know, maybe a couple of meals a week with other types of food, you know, with this brand, and then use another brand, and then add some of your own stuff to it, you know, make a smoothie, you know, just vary, you know, vary things. That's always the best, because, you know, we don't eat the same thing over and over again, although I kind of do. I eat salads every day. But anyways, I mean, we just have to have variety, and I think that's really good. Is there a type of food that helps to grow, maintain healthy gut biome? Yes, as I mentioned, some of these long-chain carbohydrates that are prebiotics. There are many out there. A lot of vegetables contain them, so adding some vegetables to the food can be very helpful. Natalie, I took your advice and used the animal biome for my client's dog. He is doing so great now. Oh, that's awesome. That's so good. Oh, hi, Marge. Marge used to work at the Whole Pet, and she's retired now and taking care of her grandbaby. So, hi. It's good to see you. Tanya, would you suggest the animal biome capsules once a year, or is there something else we should do? Also, can you do that without the microbiome testing? Yes, definitely. You know, I used to do fecal transplants without doing any testing because we didn't have testing available. So you don't have to do the testing. I mean, if you're just doing it for maintenance, you can just go ahead and do the capsules. For example, in dogs that have been on antibiotics, because, well, we had to save their lives. What I will do is I will give them some animal gut biome capsules for 7 to 10 days, just to kind of give them a little bit of a boost, and I don't usually test those. I do more of the testing on those that I really have concerns about, especially because there are some groups of microbes that need a little bit more than just an animal biome capsules or a fecal transplant, such as the Escherichia shigella group and the Clostridial group. They need a little bit of extra support on top of it. So that can be helpful to see the testing. Plus, it's kind of nice to see the before and after as well, because then it kind of gives us a little bit of peace of mind as well that what we did actually did help. And then question, in my 3-year-old dog, if my 3-year-old dog eats her own poop once in a while, does it mean her gut lacks microbiome? I'm not sure. The thing is that, you know, some dogs also develop a taste for poop once they get started. So it's possible that there's a little bit of a lack of microbiome in there, and she's trying to, you know, kind of restore her gut in that way, especially also if they eat other dogs' guts, they probably will do that, because in the animal world, all animals eat poop from each other. Horses will eat poop, you know, depending on what they need. Dogs eat rabbit poop. A lot of dogs will eat cat poop, which is really disgusting in my opinion. I go, oh, that's so stinky. And horse poop. I had one dog that I used to take for walks, and it was in an area where there was a lot of horse activity, and she would not eat every horse's poop. She would only take some. So there must have been something better in that particular poop versus the others. But certainly, you know, in a 3-year-old dog, if they don't have any issues that you can tell, it might be worth just, you know, doing a little bit of an animal biome, you know, course. And I know you're in Malaysia. I can't, Jing Tong. I'm probably butchering your name. I'm sorry, but you know, so they do ship internationally. It depends a little bit on the country, but that would probably be one way to go, unless you can find a good donor dog. And then, do you need to do an animal? No, you don't have to do that. Oh, ion gut, that's something I just add. I don't do any sort of testing before that, just because it can be helpful. Why does my puppy go after the cat's poop? Is it harmful? Well, it probably will also depend a little bit on the diet that you're feeding, Lois. I don't know what you're feeding, but for example, if we were to feed a diet that may be lacking in certain nutrients, they may be trying to also get it from the poop from another animal. And cat food is usually higher in protein, so maybe there's a bit of a protein deficiency possibly in the poop that your dog is eating. You know, because kibble diets, they're much higher in carbohydrates and lower in protein. I had another thought. Oh yeah, I had heard about a study that they had done in pigs. So they had 3 groups of pigs. One group of pigs, they were getting they were getting all organic food. And then the second group of pigs, they were actually getting the poop from the group that was eating all organic. And the third group probably was just a control group, I can't remember. So basically the second group, these pigs, all they were doing was eating poop. So they weren't getting any other kind of food. They were just eating the poop from that organically grown, that organically fed group of pigs. And that group actually did the best, the one that ate the poop. And so everything is already pre-digested. So there's also possibly that aspect, you know, that plays a role, that maybe your puppy needs a little bit of enzymes to help with being able to digest the food a little bit better. Stacy, hi Stacy. Joined late. If you've done a fecal transplant in the past, is it a one and done, or is it advisable to repeat at some point? I think I probably answered that since you came on. But yes, I think it might be advisable, you know, kind of like a preventative. I recommend doing detox preventatively twice a year, or not preventatively, it's really to help detox. So that can be helpful. Roman, would garlic be having a negative impact, as it can be antiviral? I think I feed it 3 to 4 times a week for tick prevention. Well, everything that we eat has some anti-inflammatory, has some properties. So a lot of the things that we eat, you know, have a little bit of antimicrobial properties as well. It's more depending on how much we give. Like for example, if we were to eat a ton of oregano or sage or thyme all the time, you know, constantly and large amounts, then that would affect the, you know, the microbiome. But if we do a little bit and not overdo things, then I think we're okay. It's again just all about balance. It's a bit of a balancing act. I think I did. If your dog has been on a probiotic for a while and you want to stop it, should you taper off of it? No, I don't see that there's a need for tapering off of probiotics. Actually, I guess another word on probiotics, if you are giving probiotics to an animal and they are getting worse GI-wise, if they have more gas, more burping, more diarrhea, more whatever GI signs they may have, it probably is not the right probiotic. Because with probiotics, you know, we have a microbiome that has a balance, and if I had 2 hands available right now, let me see if I can put it here. So if we have a microbiome balance, okay, so this would be a balance, then, you know, we're all good. But if, let's say, we have one group of microbes that's overrepresented compared to the others, and you give a probiotic that's actually feeding this overrepresented group already, you know, on top of it being there too much, then you have an even greater imbalance. So probiotics can actually create a bigger imbalance. So you'll never really know that unless you try the probiotic and then see what happens. So just be, you know, not all animals will do well on probiotics. So if you have worsening of GI signs, then probiotics are not, that particular probiotic is not the way to go. Can you give ion biome long term? So I'm not sure if you're talking about the ion gut or if you're talking about animal biome. both can be given long-term. Ion gut is a good thing. It can be given long-term. It doesn't taste like anything. It tastes like water. And animal biome, some dogs, if they have a really difficult immune system that tries to kill everything, they may just have to have a little bit of animal, you know, a little bit of fecal transplant on a continuous basis. So there's one case I know of, that dog gets 1 animal biome capsule a day, just to kind of maintain it. If she doesn't get that, then the microbes just kind of leave the gut. It's almost like the immune system is fighting them and getting rid of them. Tanya, are there certain brands of enzymes you suggest that all dogs should use? Since dogs are carnivores, I like animal-based enzymes a little bit better, pancreatic enzymes, for example. It depends a little bit. If you have a dog that has sensitivity to pork, those would not work because usually they come from pork, although there are some that also come from, that are made from pancreas from lamb and beef. So you just have to kind of read the fine print a little bit. And then just feeding some pancreas would work as well. And then, got it, okay. Currently with, oh, my girl is having some leaky gut issues and environmental allergies. Currently working on it with a holistic vet in my area. Oh, that's awesome. Definitely work on figuring out if there's some food sensitivity. I use NutriScan for that. That's kind of my go-to. What do you use to detox once a year? That will be a subject for another time, Kim, because I think I want to kind of close up slowly, just go through the questions. Yeah, Lumapet is actually the name, was the name, now it's called Ion Gut, but they may change it again, who knows, because they have some labeling issues. Our 11-year-old rough collie is on a raw barf diet. She's suffering from itchiness, red skin, alopecia. The vets haven't figured out if it is allergies. She was treated for a secondary bacterial infection. I can't see more. Sorry. Let me see if I can find that on your question on the computer here real quick, because it won't let me hit the see more button. But anyways, in general, any animal that has any sort of allergies, ear infections, any sort of GI stuff, it's always good to work on the microbiome and help fixing that, for sure. And I'm going to go through the comments again later anyway, so if there's any more that I can say to that, since I can't see your whole question, Leslie, I will answer you there, so just look out for that. Mary, if one feels their dog needs or could benefit from feeding microbiome, do you have to do the lab work? I already answered that. You can bypass the test unless you suspect some issues, and if you don't get the result that you're looking for with the capsules, you can always do the test after. I mean, it's not a requirement necessarily. All right, so I think I went through all the questions. You guys had some really awesome questions, and I really so enjoyed it, you know, and as usual, you know, poop is one of the subjects I love to talk about, and just because it's so rich in information, there's so much more that we can find out, and it's just the most potent medicine. I mean, if in doubt, do a fecal transplant and see what happens, you know. I think that's just... you know, that's going to be the medicine of the future. Currently, I just saw a post somewhere saying that there are about 18,000 peer-reviewed publications on the subject, and more are coming in the animal world as well. So, you know, when in doubt, do a fecal transplant. That's always the way to go. Oh yeah, does animal biome help you understand, test, and work on fixing the microbiome? Yes, they will. They are very good about that. All right, well, thank you so much, and I would really appreciate it if you could share this information, and hopefully share your the video if you feel inclined, because it's such good information for people to have. There are so many animals out there suffering from GI issues, allergies, and so on, and they can really benefit from that information. So let's just put it out there, because you're the ones who really make the difference, because you share and you know, you talk to other people, and that's how things get, you know, out there. Because if we wait for scientists and veterinarians in general to, you know, change the world, that's not going to happen. It's you guys who change the world. I just provide the information, but I would so appreciate it if you could share it. And if you want more information about the microbiome and the gut in general, because there's so much more on that, I have a video series that goes through nutrition, GI, detox, nervous system, you know, all the basic things that are the foundation for health. And you can find that on my website, peakanimalhealthcenter.com, peak as in mountain peak, P-E-A-K. And I also have my book. Always makes a good, you know, gives you a good overview of what it really takes to keep an animal healthy. And the book is, God, no, I'm blanking on the on the title. Anyways, I have a book. It's also on my website, Peak Animal Health Center. And yeah, if you have any more questions, just post them. I'm here. I will answer them. I love educating people, and I love having such an amazing audience here. Thank you so much, and also thank you so much for everybody who shared my video and watched the Facebook Live a couple of weeks ago about all the creepy crawlies. It was very heartwarming to see how many people were interested in the subject and really wanted to learn. So again, thank you so much, everybody. I love you. I love your animals, and I'm here to help you guys. So reach out. I'm here. And have a wonderful, wonderful Sunday. Bye.